If you're watching this video, there's a good chance something has been weighing on you for a while. Maybe it's something you can't quite put into words yet, but you feel it in your chest. Maybe you've been replaying moments in your head, wondering if you were the problem, wondering if you somehow caused the way you were treated. Maybe you're exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something right away. You are not imagining things. What you experienced was real, and what you're feeling right now is a completely reasonable response to something that was genuinely confusing and painful. Let's talk about something specific. 3 in the morning. That hour when the world goes quiet and there's nothing left to distract you from what's inside your own head. For most people, 3 a.m. is just a number on a clock. But if you've been involved with someone who has a narcissistic pattern, 3 a.m. is often when something shifts. The mask gets thinner. The control becomes more visible. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of late-night behavior that left you bewildered and drained, you're not alone. And what you experienced was not random. When a narcissistic woman wants to maintain control over you, she doesn't need grand gestures or public drama. She can accomplish it in quiet, subtle ways that seem almost harmless on the surface. At 3 in the morning, when you're half asleep and your defenses are low, she might reach out with a text, a call, or an emotional moment that seems like she just needs you. But the pattern beneath that moment is almost always the same. She's not reaching out because she genuinely needs comfort. She's reaching out because she needs to know you're still there. She needs to confirm that you are still within her reach, that you will still respond, that you will still drop whatever you're doing or whatever you're thinking to meet her emotional need. This is one of the most disorienting things about these patterns. It feels like love. It feels like connection. But it's not about love in the way you understand it. It's about possession. It's about keeping you tethered so that you never fully step away, never fully establish your own independence, never fully exist outside of her emotional reality. When you respond at 3 a.m., you are telling her on a primal level that you are available, that you can be accessed whenever she decides she needs access. And that gives her a sense of power and certainty that she can't generate on her own. Here's what this often looks like in practice. She might text you something that seems innocent at first, a question, a comment, a random thought. But the real message underneath isn't in the words. The real message is, I'm still here. And I need you to prove you're still here too. If you don't respond right away, the responses might escalate. She might send another message asking if you're okay, if something's wrong, why you're ignoring her. Or she might go the other direction and send something cold or distant that makes you feel like you did something wrong by not responding fast enough. Either way, the goal is the same. She needs to pull you back into her orbit. She needs to know that you can be managed, that you will still come when called, even at the most inconvenient hours, even when you're running on empty. What makes this so damaging isn't just the interruption. It's the way it trains your nervous system to always be on alert. You start to dread your phone lighting up at night, not because you don't care about her, but because you've learned that her contact usually means something complicated is coming. You start to feel anxiety even when your phone is silent, because you know another message could arrive at any moment and throw off your entire evening. This is not a healthy dynamic. This is not what connection feels like when it comes from a place of mutual respect and genuine care. Real care doesn't make you feel like you're walking on eggshells. Real care doesn't demand your constant availability as proof of your commitment. But here's what makes this so hard to recognize from the inside. When you're emotionally invested in someone, You want to believe the best about them. You want to believe that when she reaches out at 3 a.m., it's because she loves you and needs you. You might even feel proud of yourself for being there, for being the person she turns to, for being reliable in her eyes. That feeling of being needed can become addictive, especially if you grew up learning that your worth comes from being useful to others. You might not even realize that your availability has become a tool of control rather than an expression of love. So let's break down what this pattern really is. At 3 a.m., a narcissistic woman is often operating from one of a few places. Sometimes she's bored. Sometimes she's anxious. Sometimes she's been triggered by something during the day and has been sitting with that feeling, building it up, waiting for the right moment to unload it onto someone else. And unfortunately, the person she chooses to unload on is often the one she knows will respond. The one who has shown, through consistent behavior, that they will absorb whatever emotional weight she places on them. You became that person not because you're strong, but because you didn't have clear enough boundaries to stop being that person. I want to be clear about something here, because I know this can land in a confusing place. Recognizing this pattern doesn't mean she doesn't have real feelings. It doesn't mean everything she does is calculated and intentional. Some of it might be. Some of it might be more automatic, coming from deep-seated insecurity and a need to regulate her own emotional state through external sources. The point isn't to make her into a villain in your story. The point is to help you see the pattern clearly enough that you stop accepting responsibility for managing it. Here's a simple way to think about it. If you are consistently the person who gets called at 3 a.m., who gets the late-night emergency, who has to drop everything to stabilize her emotional state, ask yourself one question. When was the last time she showed up for you in the same way? When was the last time she adjusted her schedule, sacrificed her sleep, or put her own needs aside to support you during one of your difficult moments? If the answer is that she rarely or never does this, then the dynamic is not balanced. You are giving something that is not being returned in equal measure, and that imbalance is not your fault. But it is your responsibility to recognize and address. The reason this pattern is so exhausting is that it takes without asking. It takes your time, your energy, your peace. And it does it in a way that feels like it's coming from a place of need rather than exploitation. But need and exploitation are not mutually exclusive. Someone can genuinely need something from you while also putting you in a position that is not sustainable or healthy for you. When you start to see that clearly, something shifts. You stop seeing the pattern as evidence of your love and start seeing it as evidence of an imbalance that has been quietly draining you. So, what do you do with that realization? The first thing is to give yourself permission to protect your own space. You are not obligated to be available at 3 a.m. for anyone, regardless of how much you care about them, regardless of how long you've been together, regardless of how much they claim to need you. That permission is not selfish, it's necessary. Your sleep, your mental health, your sense of calm and stability, these things matter. They are not less important than her need for control or her inability to regulate her own emotions alone. Setting a boundary around when you will and won't respond does not mean you don't care. It means you are finally caring about yourself the way you've been caring about her. It means you are recognizing that you cannot be someone's entire emotional support system, especially not one that operates around the clock. Healthy relationships have balance. They have mutual support. They have respect for each other's need for space and rest. If a relationship only functions when you sacrifice your own well-being, that's not a relationship that is good for you. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. What if she gets upset when I stop responding at 3 a.m.? What if she accuses me of not caring, of abandoning her, of not loving her enough. This is where it gets important to stay grounded. When someone reacts with anger or accusations because you set a reasonable boundary, that reaction is not evidence that your boundary was wrong. It's evidence that the boundary was needed and that it disrupted a pattern she had come to depend on. Her reaction might be intense. She might make you feel guilty. She might tell you that you're not the person she thought you were. None of that means you made the wrong decision. It means you made a decision that challenged her control, and control doesn't give up easily. But here's the deeper truth underneath all of this. You cannot heal her. You cannot fix the pattern. You cannot love her hard enough, or be available enough times to make her feel secure on a fundamental level. That security has to come from inside her. And if she is not willing to look at her own patterns and do her own work, no amount of your sacrifice will fill that gap. Recognizing that isn't cold or uncaring. It's honest. It's recognizing reality instead of trying to force a reality that doesn't exist. What you can do is work on your own relationship with yourself. You can start to notice how it feels when you don't respond right away. You can notice whether you feel guilty, anxious, or obligated, and you can start to ask yourself where those feelings come from. Are they coming from genuine care? Or are they coming from a fear of what will happen if you assert yourself? Are they coming from love? Or are they coming from a need to be needed, to feel essential, to avoid the discomfort of disappointing someone? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are important ones, because sometimes the reason we stay available at 3 a.m. isn't because we love someone. It's because we're afraid of what it means about us if we don't. We're afraid that if we stop being the person who always shows up, we won't be valuable anymore. We won't matter. We'll be replaceable or forgettable. Those fears are real, but they are not facts. Your worth is not determined by how available you make yourself to someone else's needs. Your worth exists independently of that. It always has. As you start to shift this pattern, you might feel a strange mixture of relief and guilt. Relief because you're finally choosing yourself. Guilt because you've been trained to feel like choosing yourself is selfish. Both of those feelings make sense. Let them exist without fighting them. The guilt will fade as you prove to yourself that you can set boundaries and the world doesn't fall apart. That you can say no and still be a good person. That you can protect your peace and still be someone who loves deeply and genuinely. There is a version of love that doesn't require you to destroy yourself. There's a version of care that doesn't demand constant availability. There's a version of a relationship where 3 a.m. means rest, not obligation. You deserve to find out what that feels like. You deserve to experience connection without control, care without exhaustion, love without the constant weight of someone else's emotional regulation placed on your chest. You are not responsible for managing another person's emotional state at all hours. You are not obligated to sacrifice your sleep, your clarity, or your peace to keep someone else feeling secure. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to exist outside of someone else's need. If this video touched something in you, I want you to take one thing away from it. You were not the problem. The confusion you felt was real. The exhaustion was real. The pattern of being pulled in and worn down was real. And now that you see it clearly, you have the opportunity to respond differently. Not with anger, not with revenge, not with coldness, but with quiet clarity, with self-respect, with the understanding that you get to decide how you allow others to access your time, your energy, and your heart. Healing from this kind of pattern doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small decisions, in moments where you choose yourself and sit with whatever discomfort that brings. It happens in the quiet realization that you are allowed to take up space, that your needs matter, that you do not have to earn the right to exist in a relationship by constantly giving more than you have. You will find your way back to peace, not the kind of peace that comes from making her happy, but the kind that comes from knowing you finally made yourself a priority. That peace is available to you, and it's worth every uncomfortable moment it takes to get there.